to start, I'm going to run you through just a little presentation on the things that we're able to offer you in the planning and in the work that you'll be doing. All right. So the things that we'll look at today, general event planning support, event page creation on NASPA.org, online registration system, our call for programs tool, the applications nominations portal, and then on-site staff support. So general event planning, I'll send you, we have a document that is, you see the screenshot on here. It's really just a kind of 30,000 foot view of what it is to plan the conference. Some of the things to think about, when to timeline them out, and what you need to be aware of and prepared for. For us, some of the stuff at minimum is, and thankfully with the larger regional conferences, getting the approval from the regional director and regional treasurer is pretty automatic. But we want to make sure that they're in the loop because of payments or time that needs to be allocated to do certain work. We do have 2 systems that are available for you to use for the conference, and I'll make sure to show them to you before we're done. But NASPA pays for Trello and a Fortifect account, and by our national accounts with them, all of the regions have access to them as well. So Trello, if you haven't used it before, is for me much more day-to-day management. It's kind of a virtual post-it system where you can move stuff around. We have a template that has already been created that has pretty much everything you need for the conference, with all of the documents uploaded, the areas that you should think about, and it's something that's really easy to get the rest of the committee added onto there, and you can, and I'll show you in a minute, but you can assign dates and members to certain tasks and different things. Fortifect has also been used by certain conference committees to manage their day-to-day. For me, Fortifect is much more of an archival kind of process. It isn't as intuitive or day-to-day work-friendly, but you can upload documents in there. You can put all of the information on there. There are ways for you to, host like a voting if there's someone that has questions or you want to vote on the logo, something like that. But both are available to you and easy for us to create so that you're able to move forward with the committee as you'd like. And then the training calls that can be set up with NASPA staff. So similar to this call, we'll also set up eventually a call with your registration team, the programs team, sponsorship. We can do as many calls as needed to ensure that the group is set up, as well as you can have myself and or Nathan on any of your conference committee calls. That's part of the time that we take, is to sit and help answer questions, provide some regional or historical context to some of the things that you all might be thinking about. So the event page creation, this is something that we do have available for you to use, and I'll show you in a minute what the pages will look like, but it'll live on NASPA.org. It's helpful because it's the space where all of your information, registration, call for programs, sponsorship, everything should really just be in this one page. People are able to find it even if they don't have a link from you directly, because they can go to the events and see what's happening in a specific area. And there is usually about a 2-week turnaround time on getting the page set up, working between myself and the regional IT coordinator to get everything up and running. So from an initial conversation, they have a form that you can fill out with all of the information they need to create the page, and then we'll have that launched.
Can I ask a question, or do you want me to hold them till the...
No, go for it.
So the regional IT coordinator is the person who's on the advisory board for the region. So I think I've seen things done 2 different ways, because so much of this is coordination with people who are already in those positions. And so I've seen folks where the people who are in those positions then are in those positions on the committee, versus having a new person and then working jointly with that. Is there a preference from NASPA on how that moves forward, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we don't necessarily have a preference. It's just letting us know what the process is, because if there is someone, if you have a conference IT person, you have to let us know, because we have to give them access to, whereas the regional IT person automatically gets access. I do think we do have that works in a few different models. IT is one of the spaces that does that. Treasurer is another space, so there may be a regional treasurer, but then there'll be a conference treasurer, someone that works with the budget really intensely. Specifically because the people that serve on the board, they'll be supporting your event, but they're also supporting the region and all of the other events. So either way really works for us. Some of the regions have done it in both methods as well, and it's been successful. So it's up to you all on how you want to structure the committee and the workload.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Western being the joint conference, it adds an additional layer that sometimes maybe appointing a third person actually works, because then they can work jointly with both 5 and 6 coordinators. I think it's dependent on the year, and obviously that's a conversation for Scott, and I guess technically Candy, but how much do you want to rely heavily on 5 within your committee, and then a sprinkling of 6? Do you really want it split? And I think that component, the other piece as well, and I don't know, well, I guess when you were at Utah, you experienced some of this, Catherine, is how much do you want to spread the wealth among institutions and locations? And is this an opportunity to maybe find additional volunteer opportunities that 5 and 6 don't necessarily have because the board's already full? All that being said, I think figure out what works best for you, though. To Danny's point, I think it's just communicating back with us what you prefer. But, I think there's arguments for both, but knowing that, y'all always, well, every region, I guess, is really in need of volunteer positions. It might warrant creating a third position that doesn't sit on the board to then liaise with both boards.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So with the registration system, again, this is a conversation we can have again with the registration chairs once they're set. We have a form that we'll send over to you. We just have that filled out, and then we get the registration system linked up. Any events that are related to NASPA that will take funds from NASPA or from members have to go through our system. As you start thinking about that, there's the regular registration that we'll have, so NASPA members, all of that piece, but as well as if you're going to do any pre-conference events, if you're going to do any additional meals, any excursions, different things like that, all of that can really be run through the system, and we can work on just putting that into the system. And again, with this, it's about a 2-week turnaround time from the initial conversation, sending over the forms until we are able to go live. The Call for Programs tool is a NASPA branded Google form. Really, it's an opportunity to provide information. So if you want it for the Call for Programs, as you can see here on the screen, there is a space to add some additional text. There are 5 question types that we have. So you see here's the short text response. We have a long text response, radio button, which is multiple options with only one selection, checkbox, multiple options with multiple selections. And then one that we don't use as often but is available is a file upload. So if you're interested in people uploading a resume, or you want to see previous presentations, or really anything, there is an opportunity to upload documents within the system. And
for SA Speaks, because SA Speaks, you submit a program proposal, and they have to submit a video, right? But don't they usually send in a link, or do they upload it?
Yeah, so we normally do that as a long text response, and they'll put in a link like a YouTube video.
Okay.
Yeah, so they don't have to upload the actual document or the file. They can just send in the link. But we do have an upload function that is usually used, and I'll go into the application nomination portal. It's usually used in this, where people can upload, resumes, letters of recommendation, different things. The piece to think about with the portal is it's the same thing as our Call for Programs, but it really can be used in different ways. And for us, we've seen in the conference experience, if you are interested in doing a sponsorship for a stipend, for a scholarship for someone to attend, and you need them to apply, they're able to do it here. I know Region 2 this past year allowed people to sign in and register for a stipend. It was actually a reimbursement for travel. And they could then go back into the original submission and upload the receipts. And it gave us an opportunity to track all that information much easier. So something to think about as people are talking about, I want to have scholarships, or I'm interested in doing a mentoring program, or I want to do something else, and they're looking for how do I get people to sign up? This tool we can really use and turn around to whatever that system may be. On-site staff support. So for the past, I'd say at least 4 years, NASPA staff have been on site for all of the regional conferences. We have, our main job when we're on site is to help with registration. So we're at registration, ensuring that all of the balanced dues are there, that we're able to cover any of the questions that might happen, but we also act as additional support when we're there with the committee. So if there's ever a time where the whole committee needs to leave, we can manage a space. I think myself and Nathan have both dealt with some stuff where we turn around and we're like, you're volunteers, you shouldn't have to deal with this much stress. We get paid to be here. We can handle some of these higher complaint related kind of things, but also to provide some additional support. I think, Nathan and I have both served on some first time attendee presentations or NUF programming or different things like that. There's other avenues, as well as for advisory board meetings in which we're able to do support. The piece to know with on-site staff, the conference is responsible for our travel and lodging and meals while we're on site, and NASPA will cover our salary during that time. I think so. That is that with that piece. I do want to show you, I know you've obviously seen, so what the website could look like. We have an example here of what it would look like with everything filled in. So the website is intuitive enough that if there isn't information in the system, it won't show up. So this site is created with some information everywhere. So you'll see the faculty, speakers, schedule, all of this information. If you don't have a faculty that you need to talk about, this faculty tab won't populate. But I'll send you this link so that you can see what it looked like with all of the information on here. And then obviously you can look at last year's and this year's information for website. Marcus in Region 6 has been, I will say, really great and really capable of breaking our website to do some pretty awesome stuff. So a lot of the information, a lot of how this populates, this is all a lot of his HTML code that he's actually created. So he's a good resource for if you decide to have someone directly on your committee to ask, hey, how did you build this, or what did you do in order to make it look in a specific way? So there's something to think about with him. A quick tour of the registration page, and again, I know we have plenty of time, but you'll see in the first page is just some general instructions on what the document is and how to use it. Second page is really specific about the conference, so things that we need to build the registration system, the start date, the start time, end date, end time, early bird, regular registration rates to think through when you want to have that. Typically, the easiest way is to work backwards from the conference. So pick the conference date. 2 weeks to a month before that is the late registration. Usually a month to 6 weeks is your regular registration. That can be extended more. And then anytime before that from when we open until regular would be your early bird registration. And those dates, they're flexible enough, but we do definitely want to push them into a space where you get as much money early on for any payments that need to come through and make a little bit extra money for any of the late registrants. We are able to put a cap on registration as needed and to provide on-site registration and to close registration at a specific date. So typically if a conference starts on a Friday, we'll close registration Tuesday at midnight before. So that gives us time to pull final registration reports, send them over to you all Wednesday midday, and then you have time to print name badges, different things like that. So something to keep in mind. We are able to leave registration open. Obviously, it just changes the timeline of when we can provide final reports. Primary registration fees here. So we have 4 that are what we normally do. So member, student member, non-member, student non-member. You'll have them opportunities here by the dates if there's different pricing. We are able to create one-day registration. Sometimes there's a presenter rate, something to talk to the committee. They don't always also have to live on the front-facing site. If you want to create a one-day registration, but you don't want to advertise it only really if people ask, we're able to create it And then you just let us know, and we can either add that to their account or provide them with a discount code that gives them the discount to access that rate.
Are one-day rates usually for presenters that are just going to come in and present and then?
Normally it's for them. It really doesn't pop up until they ask for it. Sometimes we'll have presenters that will come for the whole conference. Sometimes they can only attend for that one day. We do have some people locally who might be more interested in just coming for the day to experience something of the conference and may not be able to stay for the whole thing. So one day rates are probably gaining a little bit more traction. That's something to think about. And it's definitely the price point for a one-day registration is still high enough that you won't have a lot of people that are like, well, I guess I can just go for one day. It's much, much cheaper. So if it's like a $300 full conference, like the one day might be between $100 and $150. Secondary conference registration fees. So as we do the pre-cons, these will be listed on here. Additional meal tickets, any of that information that we need to know for people to sign up, and anything that's going to cost extra money is important for us to know, so that way we can add that into the system. We are able to add some stuff that, just like it says on here, just additional meal ticket 1, in case you don't know what that meal ticket is going to be. We can always go through and edit some information, but it's usually best if you have all of the names for the meal tickets or all of the names for the pre-cons early on, that we add them. With the system, it's intuitive enough now that we can turn on and off things as needed. So if you're like, I want to add this pre-con, I'm not sure if it's actually going to happen, but I just want it in the system so it's there, we can add it. As well as, hey, this pre-con isn't doing well enough, can you please turn it off? And we work on refunding everybody's money.
Has that happened in our region, or region 4, 5, or 6 before?
Not so much the, I'm not sure if this is happening, let's just add it. We have had a few institutes close. So sometimes just because of the numbers, they won't meet the budgeted amount, or sometimes they're able to be combined with another pre-con. But it's, I'd say in the past 2-3 years, I haven't seen any that haven't hit the numbers. So it's something to keep in mind, that we are able to shut it down, to refund the money, to move people from one pre-con to another. Sometimes it's also not even up to the numbers. If your pre-con faculty or presenters for some reason can't attend, and it's a last minute change, and we have to, there's another reason why sometimes they get canceled or moved.
So what I remember from having been in this region for 6 years, it seems like most of our pre-cons really are institutes and not so much topic specific. And have we done topic specific ones before? Because those seem to work really well at annual conference, but.
Yeah, I can't, at least in the past few years, I can't remember them being very topic specific. They're usually professional level tiered, and then there's maybe a topic within there. Trying to think back, when I was in Seattle, I don't know, Nathan, if there's anything.
Yeah, I think the only topic specific that I can think of is, I know Leadership has sometimes sponsored a session as their sponsorship option, and I think y'all did that one year.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think it's always been the professional level institutes.
Yeah. Within here, so these registration demographic questions, you don't have to worry about as much. All of this gets pulled directly from the system now. So everything from title, institution, member type, even disability and dietary accommodations get pulled from the system, so you don't have to worry about that. We do have space for event-specific questions, so asking if it's their first time attending the conference, if they're interested in volunteering. Some conferences have actually used this as a space for pre-assessment. So they've been able to ask questions about, if this is your first conference, what are you interested in learning? So they put, 2 or 3 different things, and people can do that. Or depending on what the outcomes are, there have been a few more pre-assessment questions added to this section. Something to think about if you want to add. And then meals included with conference registration. This is a space for anything that is that you'll need meal count for. You can add it in here. So you just tell us the name of the meal, the date, and the time, and we add that. And then in the registration reports that you'll receive, you'll get to see how many people have signed up for it. The last piece on here is the confirmation email. Really, anything in red we need updated, and then this is what people get when they register. Throughout the document, you may have seen that there are a few little carrots with some additional information. Anything that is listed within the document, if you scroll all the way to the end of the document, all of the comments are available on there as well.
Okay.
There's an appendix in here in case anything cuts off, and it's got information about calculations, fees, different things like that.
That's so great.
Gosh,
that makes it so much easier.
Any general registration kind of questions?
No, I mean, do we keep it? I honestly can't remember. I mean, I feel like I've been so lucky to have institutional support. I can't remember if the amounts from conference to conference in our regions like waver much. Do they stay pretty much in the same pocket?
I'd say so. I don't think, I know that there may have been a shift, increase to meet obviously the cost of the conference experience in the past year or two, but it hasn't been this really big thing. It's also something that's usually board approval required to make a shift like that. So the pricing has a tendency to stay pretty much the same for at least definitely within a year or two.
Yeah, I will say the other thing that is just starting, Catherine, so it might not be your conference, but it might be, is a lot of the regions are starting to have the philosophical conversation on what to do with all the money that they're making. So, I think in particular, and I think this year they did fairly well too, but this traditionally for FIVE, this tends to be your moneymaker, and that's that. But with Utah and Harvard One, I think FIVE is now starting to get some of a financial foundation. And I think Fort East, for example, just had a conversation in their last conference call. They have $200,000 just sitting in reserves. So should they be continuing to grow that, or should we be offsetting the conference a little bit, or creating more scholarships, or and I think there's not. I don't think people are saying that the conference needs to lose money every year, but what the return has been traditionally, does it need to continue to be the size that it currently is? So we have an RD call next Monday, and I know that's one of the agenda items. So again, it's going to be a big shift because I know in particular SIX is very conscious of funds. So I think there's the politics that you and Scott and whoever they come in would need to navigate. But, I wouldn't recommend a huge drop necessarily, but I think to Danny's point, I don't know if the return is maybe breaking even instead of the 100,000 or whatever y'all usually normally bring in. That might be a conversation to have.
So I guess I'm curious on how, because I imagine that my role will be the lead in putting together the budget, and even though it sounds like it would be approved by the regional board and things like that, but I think would you be the people that would support me mostly in helping pull that together, or would it be Scott? Because I do think that even though I'm comfortable with budget creation, there's so much ongoing institution. I think I have a lot of worries about that, and wanting to make sure that, we do generate whatever revenue is expected, but also be thoughtful about making it accessible for people, whether through scholarships or other things.
Absolutely. So the way that it traditionally works, each region navigates and manages its own budget, and each region then determines what the return would need to be. I will say, and Danny, I don't know if you know more specifically, this is the general how the regions deal with it. Each region does have its own process, but for Fort East, for example, because I was just on their call, the board decides, okay, we need 10,000 in return. And then with that number, then you as conference chair would play around. Okay, we think we'll have 100 students at early bird, 50 at regular, 25 of late, and then go through and see what that amount ends up being. And then do you need to raise the cost? Do you need to lower the cost? I will say that, now that you've been appointed, you'll join Patrick's committee for 2018. So you'll have all of his records from the Sacramento conference. And I forget if Western one of those, but there's past conference budgets as well, and you can see what people have allocated. But it's really been a regional kind of initiative. I think Danny and I are here for support if you need it. We do have a template that is coded to their proper accounts. So you can see at least like, credit card fees is maybe something you wouldn't think about, but something that does, ends up sometimes being a significant chunk of expense, or, supplies, or whatever it ends up being. So we have this template, but then it's really ultimately up to you and Scott most likely, but I don't know. I think traditionally in the past, it's usually been the region who's hosting takes the lead and then kind of shares with the other region rather than specifically joint. Like, for example, when 4 East and 4 West did it together, like that was very much both RDs got on every conversation, which works in a collaborative sense. I will say it probably stalled some of their processes probably a little bit more than needed at times.
Yeah, I will say you'll probably work a lot with Scott in setting that up. Initially, most of the conversations happen really well with the RD, sometimes the treasurer and the conference chair. Of here's our goal, here's what we were at last year, here's what we think we should make. The benefit is that Scott has been a conference chair as well. So he's had that conversation. He knows how to deal with the budget and what the expectations are. You can be very upfront with him of like, how do we move this forward, and what is the expectation? What number do you want me to hit? I think the piece with Western Regional as well is the conference has not stopped growing over the past few years. And what that looks like, we deal with this with annual conference. Whenever we look at numbers and our budgets and different things, we always look at the past few years and then realize that New Orleans will always be an outlier, and we can't count that number as like part of our regular track.
So Hawaii, yeah.
So as you think of budgets and as you think of some of that stuff, that's helpful context when you're talking to the RD of like, where are we at based on our actual history or geographical location, not always on some of these really, really, really shiny places that people really want to go to, and how that works to manage it.
The other thing, well, it's probably going to affect more. Wait, let me do the years. No, potentially, I guess, because Catherine, do you know? I know Scott has the Experian contact, and we talked a little bit in Hawaii. Do you have a sense, at least, or can you share the couple cities that y'all are thinking about, at least?
Yeah, I can, and I wasn't sure, like, because I know. So from having been a colleague at the US Scott, I know there is a lot on his plate, and I'm trying to figure out, like, when he and I actually met in person about all this, and I think he was going to be the contact initially, but I don't know. It'll help, I think, at the end of this, if we can talk a little bit about timeline, because we were talking about potentially Boise, Idaho, which is really my last choice. I think then we'll be in the opposite direction of the most recent Hawaii conference. But he wants that to be one of the options. Portland, Oregon, and he also thought Tahoe and Reno area. And then I was like, I think we should throw in Las Vegas as an option just to see what kind of bids are out there, because I think because it's been a long enough time since we've done Vegas. Yeah, and I think you have a really different Vegas experience too, because it's this kind of city it is versus like maybe if it was Salt Lake City again, right? Like you're gonna have the same experience pretty much here. So I think those are the 4 we're looking at, but I'll be honest, I think that we're open to hearing about Boise, but I don't think that that's really on our radar. But I do think Scott wanted it to at least be one of the ones that we put out there, because I think the folks who are in Idaho would really like to see it at least be considered.
No, of course. Yeah, I know that because I know Portland we did discuss, and I think now Strategies did have to shut down. And I don't know, Danny, if you talked to some of our colleagues, our National Strategies Conference was just there, and they had like 1,200 or 1,300. So it's large enough that it could host a regional. I know there were some logistics as far as space that were up there. I do know, and Danny and I are both partial, we went to our professional association host a Young Leaders Conference that's sponsored by Reno. So, I think there's definitely space. I think there's a new Tahoe Marriott, maybe. I think there's something that's opening up in 20 as well, which I know why those 2 are on there. So all that being said, I think LA probably won't be, LA is probably going to affect Sacramento in 19 more than it's going to affect, 18 this year, then it'll affect y'all in 19, as far as that work. But to Danny's point, I think with registrations and locations, sometimes it does tend to drive numbers. But, I think maybe with the exception of Boise, I think all the other ones probably would draw, because, Scott would probably be the first to tell you, I don't think he thought Seattle was going to be that big.
I know, but it was so great. And then a couple of years ago when we did Hawaii, I heard that was actually a really small conference. I wasn't allowed to go that year, but it was.
Yeah, so they capped because of space. Versus this year they were able to continue to grow. But yeah, I think they capped at like 550. So it'll be interesting, because I think the other thing that you'll also get, now that I'm thinking about it, is you tend to get, the region tends to get an influx of new members when the annual conference is in that city. So you'll benefit because LA will be the March before.
Yeah, that's smart.
And you'll be in the new fiscal year at that point. So
I was actually thinking that one of the nice things about Vegas is I feel like there's so many schools in Southern California, and if people can drive, then you're getting folks who might not have a ton of institutional support. But yeah, I'm curious to see what the bidding process looks like, and who can accommodate such a large conference.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
I'll be right back.
So obviously that's something to take into account, and we'll work with you all as the bidding process goes through. I think Western is a big conference, and it does definitely limit some of the spaces that you can be in, but Experian is really great. They help us with annual conference and our national institute sourcing, so they'll be able to do that with you all. I think the last piece to show you, and we won't go through this whole document because it's 23 pages.
I'll read it.
This is the Call for Programs Guide. The Call for Programs Guide really helps define a timeline. So this whole to-do list is actually broken out into all of the individual sections, and you'll see each of the areas, what the timeline should look like, all of this stuff. So it walks you through setting up the call for programs, getting a call out for reviewers, a call out for people to submit. It's got all of the information, and what's really great about this document is there'll be a few parts where you'll see here, like, sample email and appendix B. All of the emails are actually already written for you. So starting here in the appendix, you see all of this stuff. You don't even have to worry with the program shares. All of the text is here. And you can update it and however you want, and then you just get it to me, and I work on sending out the emails for everybody. But it's all pretty much, most of the, at least half of the document are pre-written emails, and all of the text that needs to go out, and what we enter and what you all need to enter. I think with the call for programs, just obviously as a refresher to see what it looks like, we have the opportunity on here, session types, selecting, so this is the radio button option, selecting what you want. Some of the questions can be required, some don't have to be. And just what you want this to look like and how people will engage and interact with it. I did want to show you board effect. So board effect, like I said, is the workroom, is sometimes used by some of the conferences. Have you had any interaction with board effect yet?
Yeah, and I can't remember what in NASPA I used it for, and I don't remember, because I think we used board effect for the Anaheim conference that I was on the committee.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. So just to give you an example, so Region 2 is using board effect. So you can add some information on here. On the right, you'll see all of the people that are a part of the group. Within the library, that's probably the biggest place to add information. So for Region 2, they've been using board effect, and so all of their documents are in here. All of the different areas are in here. They have their agenda, all of the notes, anytime they have information they need to get out. It's all listed within the space. And they have someone you'll see here, Elizabeth Rappaport, is their conference executive manager, and she manages the board effect process as well.
Is the conference executive manager, is that like, I have heard the role of assistant to the chair, is that, Because conference executive manager sounds a lot more important, and
a
I
little,
like
a little
that.
fancier, yeah. And I mean, I think the piece with Elizabeth that I appreciate her in her role is it's definitely much more than just the assistant. She really does run the meetings. She's the one that may set up some individual meetings with Zach and Felipe, who are the conference chairs. She's the one that gets all of the information out, manages this process, is really the main contact along with the chair. I think it's helpful for me because it's an additional person that's on there. Also, and I'm assuming this is how they've done it, it's a really good place to put possible chair-elects, because she's getting basically the same experience as a conference chair, is getting the opportunity to really shadow and learn from them.
Okay.
And then I'll show you Trello. So this is Trello. And on Trello, these pieces are called boards for the larger piece. When you're within a board, all of these things, the vertical pieces are called lists. And within each list, there's a card. So I said, we have a template, this one that has all of the information you need. So infrastructure, registration, tech and marketing, all of these are things that we've created that some of them have, evaluation template already exists in here.
So we must have used BoardEffect for Seattle, right? Because I haven't been in this before, because I was like, I don't remember what we used for Seattle, but yeah, it wasn't this.
So, I like it. It's a fun little document. So within here, so you can see, I've been assigned to this, so I can pick members that are a part of the team. So you would upload everyone that's a part of the committee, and then you could select them. You can do color coding, which I appreciate, that also has color blindness coding, so that's why it's got the pattern. Due dates, a checklist. You can add attachments on here. So it's pretty fun. I like it. It's also very easy to just drag stuff around. You're like, oh, this is supposed to be here. It does have, so this is the desktop version. There is a Apple compatible for tablets and phones. There's one that's compatible for Android. It has, let's see if I have, I don't have the calendar. You can see, all of your notifications, all of the things that have been happening within the space.
Wow.
I'm a big fan of it. I think it's fun. It's easy to use. And you can see some of the other conferences. So Western Regional 2017 and 18 is using it as well. So 17 really took this and kind of ran with it. So they had the assistant chair, the assessment, awards. They were able to add really anything and everything that they wanted. So all of the stuff. They also used it for meeting agenda.
Cool.
Yeah. So
and I'll get access to this so I can play around in it and also see the other years. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I can add you to any of the boards. I think 2018 has been really good at using the voting options. So you can, will you be attending? You answer the question on here, and it shows everybody that's attending.
Wow, that's great.
This was Denny, who's the assistant to the chair, was able to actually tag everybody. And say, hey, make sure you answer this question and let us know.
Great.
So they're able to take that information. But it's, both systems are there. They're both available to you. As you get ready for it, you can just let us know. You're like, yeah, I want to try this one. I want to try both. I don't really care for either one. I'll do a separate process. You can just let us know, and we'll move forward with it.
And I apologize. I'm going to have to, you probably do too. I know y'all are in so many meetings. I'm going to have to get off right. We have our budget priority meeting in 15 minutes. But I want to make sure you get through everything. But I do have a couple of questions that relate.
Yeah. That's pretty much it on my end. I will send you the recording and all of the documents and links that we've talked about. So if you have any questions now, it's definitely a great time.
Well, one of the things I definitely want to make sure about is that I get I would like to see who's been on the committees and what the committee roles have been for the last 5 years, if that's okay. Sorry, I think I'm a little nervous, if I'm being honest. I know that usually it's people who've done program chairs that end up in this role, things like that. And I know that I don't have as much experience as previous chairs. I know that's kind of the timing, right? Like a lot of people decided to be in doctoral programs and so took themselves offline for this role. So I think if I can look at some of this archival data, it'll help me feel more prepared. And then the other thing I guess I was curious about concerning that. Uh-huh.
Can I cut you off for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So partly what I'm responding to, you deserve this role. Enough. Is it because other people weren't able to do it this year? Or is it because they were short on the list? You absolutely deserve this role and you are more than ready, and we are here to support you in that. So I just want to, because I think there's actually involving women of color, but Danny and I were commenting the Serve Academy that we're running. We've gotten multiple people in your position. Oh, I just didn't think I was ready, or I didn't. You absolutely are equipped for this role, and we are here to help you move forward however you need. So I just wanted to interrupt that little sentiment that I heard. So.
That's really, thank you. I wish you could follow me around every day in my daily life. It's funny, you can like do as much research as you want on these theories, right? About like how I don't know, how our identities create things like that. But it's, yeah, thank you for saying that. Now watch me really mess up and you're gonna have to have the opposite conversation with me and be like, Kat, what were you doing? Which is good. I need people to hold me accountable too. I think I've been really lucky. I really haven't been involved in any like some of the political things that sometimes people are in NASPA. And I think like since I agreed to do this, I've been hearing more about that. And so it's kind of nice. I haven't been a part of it, so I can kind of feign ignorance. But I think one of the things that would help me I'd love to hear y'all's opinions on how does putting people on the committee work, and how should it work, still being based in knowing how things have traditionally been done.
So I think that is probably the most political piece of this job, of who gets involved and why and how. Some conferences have, and you all don't, so it's very different, have a specific process. So Region 1, you get appointed to the committee for 2 years, and you serve in different roles. They actually had a 3-year commitment before that had like overlap, so there was almost always the same kind of people and they were in different roles, and then they would roll off and train someone else. I think who you pick, sometimes it's helpful. It also depends on how much work you want to put into this. So if you want a completely new group of people who have never sat on a committee, that level of access and transparency is amazing because it provides more opportunities. Nathan and I are big proponents of that the more people we can get involved, the better it is for them. But that also means you have brand new people who have never done this and have no context, have no history. It means you'll have, we are happy to provide more training, but you will have more work on the front end to support them. Whereas if you were like, hey, I'm going to pick all of the people that have been on the committees, and maybe the registration chair has been on there for 2 years, I'm going to have them come in as a programs chair, or people that have experience with that. It's helpful. It helps you move a lot faster to be able to say, hey, this is a conference. And everybody's like, yes, I get what that means. Let's move forward. It's a big mix to figure out what works, what the best space is. I'm a big fan of, and especially with such a large committee, having some people who have been in the roles before, who have a little bit of context, who and trust to be in the spaces, but also opening up the opportunity to people through Volunteer Central or through other avenues, and be like, hey, have you never done this? We'd love to have you. The caveat on that is you shouldn't have someone who has never worked with a budget as your conference treasurer, or you shouldn't have someone that's like, I am completely terrible at all technology, but I really want to learn, and put me on as your social media person. Like, some of those spaces you have to balance, and I've seen it done where someone's like, I really just wanted to give them an opportunity, and they excelled at it, but there was a lot of work that had to go in to support them in those kinds of roles.
Yeah, I will say, so Region 2, they actually did a really good job of overhauling the process this past year. So the 2018 conference chairs in Region 2. Danny, did they do it completely open? appointment, right? So yeah, so I think they
they opened it up. They did allow previous people to join though.
Yeah, but they still made them apply, Kat. So I think that there's I think probably, and knowing a little bit of you and kind of I think your ideals, I think to Danny's point, there probably are a couple positions I might have aces in your pocket. So your conference assistant or whatever you end up calling it, your chief of staff, like I would, and maybe it's if you have an executive admin on your campus, and I think that's working out really well with Danae with Patrick for 18. I've seen, so Region 2 right now, it's one of their good friends and colleagues that was on the conference committee last year. So they had a context of the committee work, but they were fine doing the minutes, making sure all the calls get scheduled. And, I think, well, in their positions also, they're more mid-level than AVP. So I don't know if they have admins to do the work anyway. So there's that logistics. I think you are early enough in the process that if you really wanted to go all out, completely open call, and if 60% of the committee were new, I think we're early enough that, and as Danny said, I think the two of us are more than willing to help, but with your context and then with Patrick, I think you're early enough in the process that you could have some completely new or some newer blood within the conference committee. To Danny's point, though, I think the executive admin or whatever you end up calling that, chief of staff, and then registration, treasurer, and maybe programs. I wouldn't put all new people in all of those roles. You can. I mean, I think, I just realized, Danny, for West, both the programs are entirely new. They're newer professionals. So it's just a different training that we can do. But, I think however you would want to move forward. And as Danny said, we have Volunteer Central. We can create an online application form. So you can ask for a resume or whatever it looks like to facilitate that.
I think the other two pieces I'd add with that is, because it's across regions, deciding how much you want 5 versus 6, figuring that out. And also knowing that some roles you can split. It's easy to have co-chairs. So if you want to have someone that's established and someone that's new, or you want to have someone from 5 and someone from 6, I've seen registration co-chairs, programs co-chairs, sponsorship co-chairs. There's a lot of different places where you can create a co-chair model that will allow you to have more representation across regions, but also more representation across experience.
Mm-hmm. So can I bounce a couple ideas off you hearing that? Because I think I hadn't thought about opening it up. And I've started kind of talking to some folks about just hearing where their workload is right now. Because I think, to be completely honest, and the reason I even was able to join the advisory board for Region 5 is because I brought it up to Leslie when she was the director and just said, hey, there's a lot of good people and they don't know how to get involved and things seem really closed. And so there's a lot of people who we've been talking about this for a long time, and they're great. And they're taking, positions in other associations. And I mean, I love NASPA, so I would want to see them be here. I also think, having been on a committee in both regions that was led by Region 6 and one that was on Region 5, I hear a lot of conversations about Region 6 sometimes being critical of Region 5 and who's on the committees over here. And, and I take that with a grain of salt, but I also, I think, notice some of that. And so I was thinking about, maybe this would be a good opportunity for a third of the committee to be folks who are newer, but also people that, I know their work and they can really perform, and they have the capacity to. And then I think I was trying to figure out too, because I know that Scott has some strong opinions about some of the people that should be on the committee, and so wanting to respect his positionality as the regional director, and also having experience, having led a committee, but also wanting to make sure that we are opening up to some new people. I appreciate y'all's feedback on that, because I don't want to. I want to find a balance, I think.
And Kat, this is my good friend, colleagues saying it rather than staff members saying it. But I think some of the kismet around 6 and 5 is more around equity and inclusion, representation, diversity, and all those sorts of things, which I know for you is core to who you are and what you do. So I think navigating that will probably be easier for you, and knowing your relationships and who you are, compared to some of the other past leaders within 5. Because I think that, and some of it is just like logistics and demographics. Like if you look at the states that are within 6 and then within 5, you know, their numbers wise it's not as representative as ideally that we would have. So, but yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's a conference chair, regional director kind of decision process on how it moves forward. The other thing to think about though too is, you know, you'll know in a week who your regional director is as well, the regional director elect. So I mean, I think it's, as much as it kind of is Scott, it's technically also that incoming person, because it's during their term. Even though they're appointed during Scott, they're serving through that next person's terms.
Yeah, and those 3 people are pretty different from each other, and not in a bad way, but they just have different perspectives. Well, that's good too. Well, then I'm curious because, like, so for example, I'll name a couple of people that that I know, at least Nathan, you know. So like Tolu, like she won an award in Seattle. She's amazing. She's done the DLI as a faculty member and as a host. I'm like, she should totally. I mean, she's a great programmer. Let's get her on this. And so people like that, I think, would be great, where they might not know the specific process, but I think have been involved in NASPA in other ways. But it sounds like maybe having one of the program chairs, having served on a committee before, it sounds like you said that registration would be great to maybe have someone who's had experience being on a committee. And then it sounds, were there other ones that you think it really?
Yeah, Kat, sorry to cut you off really quick, because Danny, you work more intimately. If they've been a volunteer in other areas of NASPA, do you think they can? Because I think that's a nuance that we weren't. But sorry, Danny, go.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, with any of the roles other than budgets and technology, it's trainable. Like, I'm happy we can sit with them, we can talk to them, and you know, we've had some people that do programs and may have done programs for other conferences, or even on campus, they've led a student leadership symposium and they know what that is. It doesn't have to be I've led a programs for a national conference and I know how to do that kind of stuff. Those skills are very trainable. I think that the ones for me are like the really hard skills. Like, do you know how to look at a budget? No. How much time do I have to help you look at a budget as my budgeting person? Or are you not comfortable turning on your computer? Maybe you shouldn't be my IT person. But the other roles.
And I think the nuance, like a Tolu, for example, if they've been involved in other NASPA leadership, so they know NASPA, they know the system, those sorts of things, I think that's a different type of volunteer than someone that's done nothing with NASPA and their first volunteer activity is serving on the conference committee. I guess that's the nuance. Okay. I think Tolu would be a great conference or programs person if that's, you know, something of interest and where you would put her, because I think she has served in these other leadership capacities for on her campus, for, you know, regionally within that area versus, and again, not that it's negative, but someone completely new. If you don't, I think the larger concern that we've seen is if you have no context on how they actually produce, and then you put them in a high role like this, that's where the issues tend to come up. If, you know, they maybe talk a big game, but their delivery isn't as great, or like that's when the issues tend to rise rather than someone has proven.
Yeah, you know, I actually have 3 other people that I'd really like to put on the conference because they've all worked for me before, and none of them are at the U or at Salt Lake Community College, but they are amazing. And I'll be honest, when I was tapped to chair the annual conference for NODA and then got this job and bowed out, you know, and that wasn't bad. It was like immediately I got in it and they went back to the pool. But these were the 3 people that I was like, I want them on that. And so I don't know. There's just some good folks. I think I know that they'll work until the job's done.
Yeah, and I think it's a balance that I think we do internally as well. I don't feel bad if you appoint half and do an open call for half as well, because I think it is it does feel awkward at times potentially, or there might be, you know, talk, but it ultimately is your conference, it's your name, and these are the people, like you said for the dissertation chair, it's people, it's the interactions among the full committee, not just the individual cohort individual members of that.
I do want to echo what Nathan said, and I know you have to run, but you don't have to have your full committee picked right now. And sometimes there's opportunities to meet people at Western Conference, meet people at annual conference, like to actually have some open spots is okay, because you're gonna, in the next 2 years, you're gonna meet some people that are gonna be like, you are perfect. I wish I had a spot on my committee for you to join. And when people start realizing you're a conference chair, your email's gonna blow up and everyone's gonna be like, I wanna join on your committee, I wanna join you, I wanna join.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah, it happens. So having some open spaces is actually also helpful.
Okay. Okay.
But I know we all have to jump off for other meetings. I'll send you this recording, and whenever you want to chat, especially about stuff like this, feel free to shoot us an email. Happy to jump on.
Great. Are both of you my contacts? Is one of you the person I should really reach out
probably
to?
Start with me.
Great.
And I'll respond. And if there's anything I don't know, I'll loop Nathan in.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Kat.
All right.
Y'all have a great day.
Thanks. See you in a couple weeks. Bye.
See you later.